Welcome everybody to TNRedStar. Back with another reading of Blood in My Eye. So we're going to continue on right from where we left off last time, which was Jonathan's comments on the aftermath of the Black Panther Party LA headquarters shootout in 1969. Let's go ahead and get into it. Have you grasped the significance of the backlash? It has stung the fascists. The people are in foment, all of them, of all persuasion. They don't dig midnight or dawn raiding parties, bullets with steel jackets, cowardly pigs perched upon their roofs, the same gases manufactured for use against the Vietnamese liberators blowing back into their faces. Repression. Quick comment. Does that sound familiar today? The same exact riot munitions and tear gas deployed against Palestinians in Palestine deployed against us here at home whenever we go out into the streets and protest. If you were active during the Black Lives Matter era, you will know this. You'll know this firsthand. Back to the text. Do you see the effect it has on the uncommitted? Comrade, repression exposes. By drawing violence from the beast, the Vanguard Party is demonstrating for the world to examine just exactly what terms their rule is predicated on their power to organize violence, or acquiescence. But check, blacks are conditioned to acquiesce. They have, in general, been led to believe that this system is the product and the property of the white man, that the white man will protect it with his all, that the white man is a killer, a reflex killer, that all we can ever hope for a reforming or expanding of the system to include the few of us who can make ourselves acceptable. It's too big for us. You can't fight City Hall. It can't happen in America and all that shit. Pig shit. Double check. All of the objective conditions are present here in the black colony for revolution. The physical thing, I mean, I want and want to, the rest of feeling, the real feeling, not the various pretenses. East Los Angeles hasn't changed a bit since you were out. Watts is still a depressed area. Many of the West Side districts are starting to resemble the older black districts. The issue of employment is still the same. We do 30 to 40% of the nation's work for 1% of the returns, and a huge pool of us is always kept unemployed to reduce the value of labor of those who are, just like 10 years ago, just like 1864 to 1865, when we were thrown on the labor market, hungry, ragged, crowded into clapboards, and unhappy. Nothing has changed since you left the street, comrade. Not in this respect, at least. Perhaps our condition stands out a little more glaringly, that's all. But you know it's been building? The Vanguard has viciously attacked the system. The omnipotent system attacked by the slave. Sort of like the worker bee, growing so disgusted with the quality of life that he turns and attacks the bear. The other bees will understand. They do understand. And all sorts of bees, even those who thought the bear their rightful ruler, see him differently when he foams at the mouth and bites at his own tail. I think you were right on track with the idea concerning repression. It has to be a part of the revolutionary process, a necessary stage in the development of revolutionary consciousness. The situation being, as it was and is, the black experience is what I'm referring to here. The milder lynch example type repression is accepted by us as a necessary part of life, but the new harsher thing brought on by the political thrust of the Vanguard Party serves to show even the most tractable of the reformers among us that firstly the system will not, or actually cannot, meet our demands. Secondly, it clearly illustrates the real terms of our existence under capitalism, the nature of it, and how foul a piece of the pie would be, even if we could have some. One fundamental problem remains: the survival of the Vanguard political party, and I mean in good form. We must think to the righteous fielding of a clandestine army. John Lennon, Guevara, and Fanon, all in their particular fashions, postulate that before revolution can take place, all other forms of redress must be exhausted, clearly exhausted. Electoral processes must have broken down. The confidence of the electorate in any of the old forms completely shattered. Confidence in the ability of the old system to honestly organize any aspect of public life must be shaken to the core. And quick comment, we're getting close to that. Like it, you can honestly make a fair argument, a fair and compelling argument that what's being described there, we're already in those stages to where the electoral process is about to be broken down. I mean, the Republicans just bought Dominion voting systems. They don't intend on leaving office. This administration doesn't intend on leaving office. Like, even if we were to have free elections, they certainly wouldn't be fair. It'd be like elections you see in Turkey, for example. People are losing faith in other institutions as well, as more people see ICE, FBI, the whole entire Trump administration in general just completely disregard the Constitution, which in America, the Constitution is looked at as like this holy fucking piece of paper that must never be that where nothing on there must ever be violated. It must never be violated. Well, this administration, ICE, have walked all over it. Federal courts have pushed back on Trump's decisions, only to either capitulate or get overruled by a higher court. People are slowly losing faith in the institutions that we know this country to have, that we're all accustomed to. Yeah, I believe you can argue that we are in the midst of that stage now, where all other forms of redress outside of a revolution or a general strike are exhausted. Continuing to the text. Years and years ago, it may have been an acceptable tactic to organize a people's ticket of solid worker and revolutionary credentials and armament with an ideal platform, only to be defeated by a mudslinging, opportunist warlord, demonstrably inferior, scum-swilling pig, that pass out a pamphlet to explain to the people how the system has failed them, or speaking it in Pershing Square, or years ago in the campus hall. Today, it is not a tactic. It's counter-revolution. After 40 years, it's pretty clear that it will not suffice. Years ago, working with and attempting to influence union leadership may have been judicious, but the government has long since infiltrated and bought off this leadership and legislated away the strike. Union hall speeches and pamphlet passing are playing a revolution. It isn't revolutionary or materialist to disconnect things, to disconnect revolutionary consciousness from revolutionizing activity, to build consciousness with political agitation and educational issue making alone is idealistic rather than materialist. The effect has been reformism rather than revolution. When any election is held, it will fortify rather than destroy the credibility of the power brokers. We're going to repeat that one more time. When any election is held, the effect has been reformism rather than revolution. When any election is held, it will fortify rather than destroy the credibility of the power brokers. When we participate in this election to win instead of disrupt, we're lending to this credibility and destroying our own. And we'll repeat that one too. When we participate in this election to win instead of disrupt, we're lending to its credibility and destroying our own. With all the factors of control over the electoral system in the hands of the minority ruling class, the People's Party can always be made to seem isolated, unimportant, and even extraneous. These tactics still give the appearance of revolution to some. After decades of miscarriage, we are justified in replacing them as a vanguard. When people begin to express their disgust at the demagogic and reformist maneuvers of the vanguard parties, they will discover in real action a new form of political activity which in no way resembles the old. These politics are the politics of leaders and organizers living inside history who take the lead with their brains and their muscles in the fight for freedom. These politics are revolutionary and social, and these new facts, which the native will now come to know exist only in action. They are the essence of the fight which explodes the old colonial truths and reveals unexpected facets, which brings out new meanings and pinpoints the contradictions camouflaged by these facts. The people engaged in the struggle who, because of it, command and know these facts, go forward, freed from colonialism and forewarned of all attempts of mystification, inoculated against all national anthems, violence alone, violence committed by the people, violence organized and educated by its leaders, makes it possible for the masses to understand social truths and gives the key to them. Without that struggle, without that knowledge of practice of action, there's nothing but a fancy dress parade and the blare of trumpets. There's nothing save a minimum of readaptation, a few reforms at the top, a flag waving, and down here at the bottom, an undivided mass still living in the Middle Ages, endlessly marking time. In the general retreat to avoid full commitment to right the discomfort out of revolution, some have raised a debate among us that has degenerated into name calling, quoting the same authorities to validate diametrically opposed ideas, which you see that a lot when you see for example, when you see people invoking Lenin or referencing Lenin's left-wing communism and infantile disorder. You'll see a lot of people who are electoralists or more reformists using that in an incorrect way and in an incorrect context, I'll add, to try to make a point of supporting a Democratic candidate. For example, I think Vosh did something like that when it came to voting for Biden in 2020. He wasn't the only one that did that. There were some people that tried that with Kamala Harris. People have recently tried that with Graham Plattner. I would even argue some people tried it with Zoran. But a lot of the things we deal with on the left aren't new. They've always been there in left-wing movements. They've been navigated differently over time, of course, but those differences have always been present in left-wing movements, among the Panthers, among the Bolsheviks, you name it. These differences have always existed, continuing to the text, and ultimately creating a process that is dividing us into two mutually exclusive or contradictory groups. The overall effort is to reduce us to caricature, where more than one individual is involved in any life situation. In fact, the fact of subjectivism will always make differences based on opinion and interpretation. A problem in exchanges and reaching the necessary means for the initiation of collective activity. Some debate will always be carried on. However, on the basics, we must somehow agree or nothing will get done. All opinions are not of equal value, and there is such thing as counterproductive revisionism. Stupidity is not unknown to our long-range political policymakers. Participation in electoral politics organized by the enemy state after recognizing that whole process must be discredited as a conditional step into revolution, and particularly participation that tends to authenticate this process, is the opposite of revolution. It's a tactic for the ultra-rightists. True. With history as a guide, we can never make such a monumental errors. The history of the United States, the blood-soaked, urine-steeped essence of its being, the wreckage and demise of its human character under the wheels of a 200-year-old headlong flight with heedless, frightened animals at the controls of a machine that has mastered them, allows for no appeal on a strictly ideological level. George Wallace or Adolf Hitler would fare better at the polls of an honest election than Huey Newton or Tom Hayden. But again, what is an honest election after the fact of monopoly capital? Repression is indeed a part of revolution, a natural aspect of antithesis, the always to be expected defense attack reflex of the beleaguered, toothless tiger. All arguments against this fundamental fact are false and labored to the point of being completely illogical. Can power seriously be challenged without a response? Will the robber baron, the tycoon, the Führer allow us to seize his privilege without resistance? Can we steal it away? Can we steal it away from the greatest bandit of all time with a sleight of hand alone? Incredible. The fascists understand the value of mass psychology, are familiar with its use, and hold all the important implements of effective control, but they are not aware of our existence and our general strategy regarding the reaching of people. The whole situation can be reduced to a minority ruling clique, engaging the people's vanguard elements for control of the masses. The ruling clique approaches its task with a what to think program. The vanguard elements have a much more difficult job of promoting how to think. No tactic can be ignored or discounted in such a battle. Power responds to all threats. The response is repression. If the threat is a small one, the fascist tactic is to laugh it off, ignore it, isolate it with its defense mechanism, media. The greater the threat, the greater the corresponding violence from power. The only effective challenge to power is one that is broad enough to make isolation impossible and intensive enough to cause repression to affect the normal lifestyle of many members of the society as possible. By compromising and playing a class war, we lose. If some effective means of threatening to wield power is not used in the opening stages of revolutionary activity, repression will concentrate itself on the vanguard elements only. When the ideal situation is for the people to feel the raw essence of power, nothing can bend consciousness more effectively than a false arrest, a no-knock invasion, careless, panic-stricken gunfire. These will frighten some, anger others. Now, quick comment. Think about the videos you see coming out of Portland, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles. I could name it from all over the country, even like small towns that like you typically don't hear of that have some ice activity. The more those people escalate, the more these untrained thugs escalate, the greater the chances of like resistance fighters coming out of this, like actual fucking resistance fighters coming out of this. I said that in a video where I covered uh, ICE's spending going up by being increased by 700% since like January. Uh, yeah, this is how resistance fighters get made. Yeah, all the like reckless, indiscriminate tear gas and scares some people, but it pisses a lot of people off too. When someone has to literally jump out of their car, grab their baby in the car seat still, out of the car, and run for dear life while a massive cloud of tear gas is just barreling their way, they're gonna remember that. That's how a resistance fighter gets made right there. When all someone can think about is how an occupying force put their child's life in danger or took their child's life. That's how resistance fighters get made. Resistance fighters get made when a little boy, a teenage boy, watches his dad get snatched away right in front of him, watches his dad get killed right in front of him. That's how resistance fighters get made. So, yeah, meditate on that. Meditate on what George Jackson said right there. And think about different instances of violent state repression that we have seen since this book was published. It was published in 1971, mind you. Just think about different instances of state violence and state repression that you have seen, even before now. Continuing. Common sense alone tells me whom the people will turn their anger against. Perhaps for a short time they will be angry at us, but since the pig is a pig, it won't be long before this anger is channeled in the right direction. Revolution builds in stages. It isn't cool or romantic. It's bold and vicious. It's stalking and being stalked. The opposition rising above our level of violence to repress us, and our forces learning how to counter this repression and again pulling ourselves above their level of violence. That process repeats itself again and again until finally the level is reached where the real power of the people is felt and the ruling class is suppressed. The power of the people lies in its greater potential violence. And this power of the people, their greater potential violence, can be brought to fruition only if conditions in an urban society are created by the application of the Foucault theory. The Foucault theory can only be effective only when it does not allow itself to be isolated from the people, thus exposing itself to the vastly superior firepower of the corporate state. There is no doubt that Fidel's Foucault was motor to the revolution in Cuba, but nor can there be any doubt that Fidel's organizational genius made sure that the Foucault remained in the center of the much bigger revolutionary movement, which it controlled or guided for its military movement, which it controlled or guided for military and political advantage. The Foucault may as well be the best tactic to mount the motor, but it needs a long period of preparation, intensive organizational work to set up an efficient, reliable machinery which will not only generate the atmosphere for armed struggle by Foucault's but will also guarantee their logistic, communication, survival programs, and propaganda network. The traditional communist parties of the world claim they are doing just that, and have been, mostly peacefully, for 40 years. That is not what Behar had in mind when he said there have been real stages of hard underground life. Behar and New Left revolutionaries all over the world know very well that a revolutionary lifestyle is a warrior's lifestyle. By stages, he meant of combat. And that is precisely the way in which revolutionaries can be honed into the kind of organization capable of leading a people's war. We are in an impasse now, because the next level of revolutionary consciousness and activity cannot be reached without calling down on the nation a corresponding and perhaps overreactionary repression. And it's not the people who dread this next level of commitment. They don't understand the significance of it as yet. The fear rests with some of the old vanguard elements. I refer you again to Mao. When the revolution fails, it is the fault of the vanguard party. Some of the fear is an honest fear that revolution will be impressed entirely. These thinkers have historical references that roll them back to Europe, to the time of Hitler's Germany and Italy in the 20s and 30s, but I say that can never happen here. That was too long ago and too far away, and none of those European countries had 30 million irate niggas on their hands. None of that ever had to happen. For the same reason, we don't have to allow it to happen, which it's fucking true. Like, good luck actually committing good luck actually committing a genocide against the black population in America, because you will have a serious fight on your hands. Like a serious fight on your hands. You might get a couple of tap dancers to help you, but you're gonna have a serious fight on your hands, and it's not gonna it's not gonna end the way you would think it would. It really wouldn't. So George Jackson had a strong point there. Back to the text. All reactionary movements depend principally on a handful of individuals, sometimes one individual. There are many thousands of ways to correct individuals. The best way is to send one armed expert. I don't mean to outshout them with logic. I mean correct them, slay them, assassinate them with thuggy, by silenced pistol, shotgun, with a high-powered rifle, shooting from 400 yards away and behind a rock, suffocation, strangulation, crucifixion, burning with the flamethrower, dispatched by bomb. Auto accidents happen all day. People drown, get poleaxed, breathe noxious gases, get stabbed, get poisoned with the bad water, ratsbane, germicides, hemlock, arsenic, strychnine, LSD, 25 concentrate, cyanide, hydrocyanic acid, vitriol. A snake can bite him. Nicotine oil is deadly. An overdose of dope. There's deadly nightshade, belladonna, datura, wolfsbane, foxglove, aconite, ptomaine, botulism, and the death of 1,000 cuts. But a curse won't work. We're going to have to fight to win. The logic of procrastination has been destroyed. A people can never be so repressed that they can't strike back in some way. We will purge poltroons and fight, or just ignore them. The reality of power's automatic defense reflexes makes it possible for us to measure our own effectiveness. Their efforts to seriously repress us indicate that we have reached people, and that we are finally in the fight. And we cannot ever be truly repressed. There is quite simply no way for an established government to defeat an internal, determined, aggressive enemy, especially in an urban society. The mechanics, logic, and logistics of urban people's guerrilla warfare cannot be defeated. And the opening stages of such a conflict, before a unified left can be established, before most people have accepted the inevitability of war, before we are able to militarily to organize massive violence, we must depend on the limited collective violence tied to an exact political purpose. In the early service of the people, there must be totally committed professional revolutionaries who understand that all human life is meaningless if it is not accompanied by the controls that determine its quality. I'm one of these. My life has absolutely no value. I am the man under hatches, the desperate one. We will make the revolution. Nothing can stop us. We are not intimidated by the specter of repression. We are already repressed. The Black Legion and their terror leaves us cold and unafraid. We will meet it with counter-terror. We will never allow ourselves to be immobilized by a tactic that actually works better for us. The lynch murder of a friend. It makes me angry, not afraid. I'm the next man that must be lynched. My forefather trembled when his brother was lynched. But my brother's immolation means war to the death, war to the utmost, war to the knife. Violence is not supposed to work in America. For one, that is, except the omnipotent administrator. But this has yet to be proved to be to my satisfaction, since I know that a bomb is a bomb is a bomb. It twists steel, shatters concrete, and dismembers men everywhere else in the world. Why not those made in America? A bullet fired from an assault rifle in the hands of a Vietnamese liberation fighter will kill a pig in Vietnam. Why won't it kill a pig in the place where the pigs are made? Counterterrorism is a facet of urban people's guerrilla warfare. It's our logical response to the repressive measures taken by the enemy state to contain us in the early stages of the rebellion. Our military cadre involved in this activity has a tactical advantage over the establishment's terrorists only if we remain clandestine. While working at the direction of a political front, we must remain separate from it. The ranks of these early soldiers must be absolutely impervious to infiltration. Preconditions must be made to keep this cadre impenetrable to police spies and less committed cadres. In The Coming of the New International, John Garassi observed that, as a leading pragmatist, Lenin believed that the only way a revolution could come about in Europe in his time was by the creation of a revolutionary organization. That organization had to be tight, well-trained, loyal to the Central Committee, dedicated and narrow, not only for ideological reasons, hence purges and sectarian splits were to be encouraged during its formative years, but also for security. And Lenin states that the more we confine the membership of such an organization to people who are professionally engaged in revolutionary activity and who have been professionally trained in the art of combating the police, the more difficult it will be to unearth the organization. One of Jonathan's reports contains the following: I find it almost impossible to trust comrades, not after all this. They say Gloves Davis, a black pig, killed Fred Hampton while he was asleep. I certainly don't have to mention all the so-called defectors who are now appearing before the government committees, testifying for the state. They were infiltrators to begin with, the house niggas who ran to the high sheriff as soon as someone whispered revolt. I think I hate them worse than I hate the sheriff or the owner. I'm just a young slave, you say, trying to understand and cope with my environment. I know personalities have no place in revolution, but every time I think of Davis, Just Be Simple, Karinga, and the rest of those murderous turncoat idiots, my trigger finger fairly itches. None persons like Karinga, Leroy Jones, and the other right-wing blacks are intelligent enough to know what they're doing. We cannot excuse them with the ease that we can excuse the average brother who has had no opportunity or inclination to search. The mantle of ignorance doesn't cover their behavior. They have to know that when they attack socialism, the communist ideal, and revolution, that they are not logically or illogically attacking all that is white, etc. They know that Ho Chi Minh isn't white, or Chairman Mao, or Nkrumah, Lumumba, and Toure. They know that there is but one fight going on across the planet, the one between the imperialist forces of capitalism and its victims. They know that it was for work, that we were kidnapped. What else do you feed a slave for? These black men, if you can swallow their shit, have had time to study. Some have traveled. They know that it was capitalist agricultural economics that first caused our pain, and that the only change since then is the decline of the agricultural elite and the rise of the modern bourgeoisie. A sweatshop displaced a plantation. Could it escape their notice that all the African states that really liberated themselves booted out the foreign businessmen and are now socialist states? No. I think the strongest suggestion is that they are working for the government. The new house niggas. And what better way is there for them to sell themselves to us than to scream black like Tom Boya, whose whole service for the CIA was to redirect the revolutionary rage of the people into a thing more compatible with the interests of Western businessmen. They are spies. Death to spies. I don't think it is a personality clash at all for us to teach these black pigs that we will not be altered from our course, that the reward for counter-revolution is death. We can't continue to expect or wish for loyalty to the people. We'll have to demand it. And that's both from these cowardly fat mouths who come to us in their disguise, cultural nationalism, from the class defectors who Tommy gun us in our sleep. I'll make an example of Gloves Davis. Even if I have to hobo to Chicago, they'll find him strung up to a street light by his heels with our sign burned into his forehead. Tests must be devised to guard them ourselves against the possibility of these fools getting into our separate military groups. There is no way to stop the infiltration of an above ground political group, but we can guard the clandestine army by one, letting no one choose us. Even if they did know about us and could find us, we do the choosing. Two, once we choose someone to do the people's military work, they should be isolated and tested thoroughly, and their background checked. There are patterns to people's lives, especially blacks, that if studied, one can easily spot pig tendencies and connections. Checks could be run through some of our own people who have friends and sympathizers who own, say, used car lots or any business that generally deals in credit. A great deal can be learned through the various credit check institutions these days. Will be using one of their own instruments for the real purpose that they invented it against them. Generally, that's the way it will be throughout the war. Testing can be developed into a science, written stuff to reestablish ourselves, the patterns of this soldier's background. The full commitment generally comes as a result of awareness, and awareness is the product of study and observation. The things a person has gone to the effort of reading and analyzing can say a great deal about his character. In other words, every few black intelligence agents will have studied Marx, Mao, Lenin, Fanon, cats like that, in depth. You can generally tell what processes a man's mind has gone through by what he studied, observed, so examined. Even the post office will do that. Written and oral tests. Drugs are not to be discounted either. Oral tests under truth drug. Then you have the ultimate test. The things that no agent of the establishment can do. Like assassinate the local head of the Gestapo. Bring him out of isolation blindfolded, arm him, and tell him what to do, where to go afterward, and wait, etc. I think you could be fairly sure of him after a series of tests like these. We're only thinking in terms of a small, highly trained, super secret countercluxus vanguard group. However, dealing with the people you've known over years and have seen tested and fire already is best, like me, you, and your comrades and mine. The blacks who joined the armed expeditionary forces just for profit, the cats who steal them blind and hustle the other suckers. They are starting to stir, to become aware also. This Vietnam adventure on the part of the fascists has vastly changed the whole relationship between the masses and the ruling class. Can you detect the subtle changes? The really ugly side of imperialism is being demonstrated for not just the people who suffer its effects abroad, but to the little sleepy guy here inside the United States. They're starting now to make the link between foreign wars and foreign businesses. They're better able to make the comparisons and conclusions. Ho Chi Minh versus Kai, for example. People are all starting to say such things as some form of socialism is the answer. Time to move. We must show them that resistance is possible and that there is a hard left cadre willing to lead it. Conditions are right now for the beginnings, at the least, of a revolutionary culture. These conditions have always been present here inside the black colony, but no leadership until now. If we can keep the Panther alive by protecting party workers with the show of underground strength, watching the watcher, assassinating the assassins, I think the people will start to listen to them. Blacks have grown very cynical to all groups who make claims in the area of problem solving, since there have been 1 million groups and no problem solved. The physical conditions are right for the start of a protracted war. We have yet to hit on the tactic for control of attitudes. However, how to make people organize and resist the ruin of their lives. And it's for certain that we'll never figure out the right tactic if the pigs keep killing off and busting all the vanguard elements. The time has come. Bobby sees the time makes sense. We can't build a mass movement without finding some way to stay alive long enough to let them know we're here, and that we're not just out to play on them. That we are finally prepared to totally commit ourselves to the fight, and that we will never abandon them when the pig moves in with his pistols and paddy wagons, that we're willing to take it to the graveyard. A show of organizational skill and valid anti-establishmentism will always bring on violence from the fascists. The people know this, so they must also know that this violence can be countered before they'll believe and respond. Let the ruling class tremble at a communist revolution. It's my favorite line in all of Marx and Engels. From Fanon, it's the time for talking has ended and the time for acting has begun. Long live the guerrilla. John, the counter-terrorist, faceless, nameless, specialist in all martial arts, is the first soldier of the people. His violence will be swift, surprising, explosive, and tied into a clearly political matrix. In some cases of assassination, it may be wise to make them appear as accidents, but that still doesn't reduce the political content. These workers, properly distributed and going about their tasks with secret, flawless precision and in perfect unison with the political front, will shake the fascists to their very foundations. Their limited, highly selective violence is the absolute minimum for enforcing the demands of the people. Anything less will fail. We are not dealing with nice people who would throw down their guns and submit to our will because we outnumber them. From the vantage point of established power in history, they know that one armed man can control 1,000. People's war is not polite or proper. It is not possible to limit the scope and range of violence to what the enemy will bear without reacting. Any activity that may do violence to their control will never be permitted. Let's repeat that line one more time for some emphasis. Any activity that may do their violence to their control will never be permitted. People's war is improvisation and more improvisation. It is organizing the masses around their realistic needs and moving them against whatever forces restrict their passage to power. I repeat, realistic, day-to-day needs should be the basis of organizing people and making them conscious of revolution. That the world, the universe, must revolve, that it will stop, stagnate, or die for no man's privilege. If we accept revolution, we must accept all that it implies: repression, counterterrorism, days filled with work, nervous strain, prison, funerals. Our present problem as soldiers is to protect our political people at their work and enforce the increasing demands that the people as a political result will make upon power. The soldier is the counter-terrorist, the bodyguard, the first of a military vanguard. The distance between him and the class enemy is a free fire zone. He has to be the baddest and strongest of our kind, calm, sure, self-possessed, completely familiar with the fact that the only things that stand between black men and violent death are the fast break, quick draw, and snapshot. Terrible Jonathan's teeth on the barrel of the political tool, hardened against the concrete of the most uncivilized jungles on the planet. Chicago, St. Louis, Los Angeles, San Francisco, tested in a dozen fires. Tall, slim youth, the new nigga, with a gun and the eyes of the hunter and the hunter of men. These comrades must make the first contribution. They will be the first to fall. We must gather up their bodies, clean them, kiss them, and smile. Their funerals should be gala affairs of home-brewed wine and revolutionary music to do the dance of death by. We should be sad only that it's taken us so many generations to produce them. Building consciousness and revolutionary culture against the repressive natural defense reflexes of the system means taking realistic day-to-day issues like hunger, the need for clothing and housing, joblessness. It involves provoking repression, feeding on it. The fact that political and political economic prisoners and legions and the processes used by the oppressors to judge and condemn them must be used as the rallying cries of revolution. Economic crime and even crimes of passion against the oppressors must be understood as rebellion. Even funerals can be used as an issue, since there will be so many of them. Improvising on reality is the key principle to underlying the building of a united left and raising the consciousness of the people. It will give us our tactics. In the black colony and other depressed areas of the country, there will be less difficulty in organizing, mobilizing, and altering the attitudes of the people towards their class enemies. However, in the areas of the class struggle, of the class structure that can be said to be making it, affecting attitudes toward a revolutionary change in the system of production and distribution will, of course, call for the destruction of their comfort, the manufacturing of a condition where they will either be neutral or complementary to the revolutionary effort. These will be like, quick comment, your black capitalists, your black liberals. I wouldn't say your black conservatives. That's a whole different subject in this book. Those are house niggas, is what he refers to them as in this book. However, the people that he's referring to, they're like black bourgeoisie, black capitalists. A lot of those people will say a lot of the same things echoed by people within that same like class group in this text that George mentions, that they say, "Oh, we'll do most of the dying. Ain't no sense in black folks taking part of a revolution. We'll do most of the dying." When like, yeah, we're already doing most of the dying is the point that George makes. Back to the point. Back to the book. The psychological effect of our secret army, the real destructive effect it can have, an increasingly pervasive underground press with new emphasis on a mass style, the popularization of the revolutionary culture, and then the elevating of it, both under the direction of an ultra-aggressive political party. These three, with no element missing, connected to the realistic issues, form the basis of our only hope. There will be no educating, no consciousness, no revolutionary culture, no forward movement without these three elements working in harmony of a healthy organism. To sum up, the existence of a political vanguard precedes the existence of any other elements of a truly revolutionary culture. If the thrust of this political vanguard is effective, demonstrating realistic, sincere demands aimed at the overthrow of established power, it will be attacked by the built-in automatic survival instincts of the established power complex. Let that line sink in. Seriously. Creating and supporting the need to counterpoise the violence of power. Without the ability to organize a counterforce to neutralize the violence of established power, antithesis dies. We are not contending with fools who will allow us to simply walk in and organize people to war against them. All serious challenges will be met with panic and repression. This is axiomatic. We must not allow ourselves to be hunted, imprisoned, and murdered. We will never yield to terror tactics. We will organize a violence of our own, hidden and more aggressive. We fight from a position of weakness, but there are tactical devices that, if employed without restraint, will afford us a very real advantage. The fascists believe that one guard with a machine gun can control 1,000 men, but I know that this guard cannot watch all 1,000 at once. While his attention and gun are trained on a gathering of men who whisper freedom and closing on his blind side, my knife will claim his life. A political thrust is immediately followed by a hidden military thrust in the opening phases of revolutionary culture. Leadership must be protected, and it helps people bit by bit to understand and relate to the necessity of violence in any plan to overthrow anything. Overthrow means violence. In our case, it means putting to death. This is the last time I'll repeat for those of us who, for one, dread another, seem not too receptive. Fighting originates from a well-developed kicking ass. The proletariat, the working class, is still the most revolutionary class and still the real gravedigger of capitalist society. However, the notion that they alone can or must carry the revolution is too ridiculous and simplistic for any serious consideration at all. The industrial working force of today's modern industrial state may be pivotal in carrying out a successful revolution against that state, but their power and numbers have vastly reduced developments such as automation, military corporate elitism, the connection through marriage of government, military, and corporate heads, the new class of National Guard pigs, they broke the post-strike, government-controlled unions, right-to-work laws, etc. The argument that centers on the ideal that all workers must be politically educated before revolution can support a violent thrust verges on the absurd.
Today, nearly 6.5 million of them can't find work. And those who are working seem to be convinced that foreign wars and armaments spending are more desirable than unemployment. Of course, they should be made conscious of their exploitation, and they must be moved to act in their behalf. Those who feel that they are doing well, and those who are actually doing well, should be introduced to the fact of surplus value. Waiting passively for the final verdict of history is not making revolution. Listen, I'm going to say that line again. Waiting passively for the final verdict of history is not making revolution. It flies in the face of revolution. It ignores the existence of bread and circuses, terror from the right, the racism and animalism of ruling class pigs. It doesn't take into account the fact that they know we are coming. They know how to hold on to their privilege. Could they have held it this long otherwise? We are being repressed now. Courts that dispense no justice and concentration camps. And quick, I'm going to read a footnote, surplus value, for those of you who didn't understand that term. Surplus value in Marxian economics is the number of hours a worker can work in excess of what is required to provide him with the minimum sustenance. The product of surplus labor is known as surplus value. It is the only source of profit for the capitalists and leads to the exploitation of the worker. We are being repressed now. Courts that dispense no justice and concentration camps are already in existence. There are more secret police in this country than all others combined. So many that they constitute a whole new class that has attached itself to the power complex. Repression is here. It's time to move with determination. After our victory, no one will escape our justice with the now historically class line, well, we didn't know. Repression is here now, and we won't reach the next level of revolutionary consciousness and activity until we meet it with the counter-terror and demonstrate to the people that we are here and resistance is possible. From a letter mailed by Jonathan shortly before his death. Why do we go for this old shit? Most of the fascist functionaries live as unregarded as I do. I could slip a knife between Mac Rafferty's ribs. The Agnews and the DuPonts, the Rockefellers and Morgans, all of the Getty, Hunt, and Hughes types who sneak around in armored cars and jets are just as reachable. Anyone who will come out of his bomb shelter can be had. Imagine what Nixon's armored car would look like if I stepped out of the alley and hit it with an anti-tank rocket launcher under my coat. A ball of fire. Hell will be there forward. And those are the words of Jonathan Jackson. But the guerrilla needs our help. When Jonathan steps forward with his anti-Nixon rocket launcher, there should be 9 more like himself with assault rifles to close an exit path for him. And there should be a political infrastructure, a cadre, not far away to explain his actions and glean from them the greatest possible overall political effect. Prestige stands between the masses and a revolt against their class enemy. The aura of magic, glamour, luster, and splendid permanence covers the fascists like a protective layer of fat. The slimy scales of majesty shield and conceal the dilapidation of the old bourgeois reign of terror. Although, in reality, nothing remains but the illusion. They can still organize violence, but the Indo-Chinese have proved that to be not too formidable. Our present task is to illustrate this point forcefully to the people. The fascist industrial state can organize a ponderous mechanized violence, but this systematic industrially based holding action is helpless before the fluid, mobile, self-impelled attrition of people's urban guerrilla warfare. With his techniques fully developed and established, the urban guerrilla launches his attacks on the corporate military police complex with some of these military objectives in mind. To weaken the local guards of the security system of the dictatorship, given the fact that we are attacking and the guerrillas defending, which means catching the government in a defensive position with its troop immobilized in defense of the entire complex of national maintenance, with its ever-present fears of an attack on its strategic nerve centers, and without ever knowing where, how, and when that attack will come, to attack on every side with many different armed groups, few in number, each self-contained and operating separately, to disperse the government forces in their pursuit thoroughly fragmented organization instead of offering the dictatorship the opportunity to concentrate its forces of repression on the destruction of one tightly organized system operating throughout the country. To give proof of its combativeness, decision, firmness, determination, and persistence in the attack on the military dictatorship in order to permit all malcontents to follow our example and fight with urban guerrilla tactics. Meanwhile, the government, with all of its problems, incapable of halting guerrilla operations in the city, will lose time and suffer endless attrition and will finally be forced to pull back its repressive troops in order to mount guard over the banks, industries, armories, military barracks, prisons, public offices, radio and television stations, North American firms, gas storage tanks, oil refineries, ships, airplanes, ports, residences of outstanding members of the regime, such as ministers and generals, police stations and official organizations, etc., to increase urban guerrilla disturbances gradually in an endless ascendancy, unforeseen actions, such that the government troops cannot leave the urban areas to pursue the guerrilla in the interior without running the risk of abandoning the cities and permitting rebellion to increase on the coast as well as in the interior of the country. To oblige the army and police, with the commanders and their assistants, to change the relative comforts and tranquility of their barracks and their usual rest for a state of alarm and growing tension in the expectation of an attack or in search for tracks that vanish without a trace, to avoid open battle and decisive combat with the government, limiting the struggle to brief and rapid attacks with lightning results, to assure for the urban guerrilla a maximum freedom of maneuver and action without ever relinquishing the use of armed violence, remaining firmly oriented toward helping the beginning of a rural guerrilla warfare and supporting the construction of the Revolutionary Army for national liberation. Prestige is an abstract and intangible. It has no material basis, no substantial, objective reality to be perceived through the senses. One can't touch it or taste it, see it or smell it. It can't be heard. So how does it exist? Subjectively, in the mind's eye, after the fact of some connected circumstances that may have also been subjective. We're looking for the connections. The materialist approach is to examine things with in their total sequence, see them in the process, not to merely establish their being in fixed sequential images, but to take in the state of being in process, infancy, maturity, decline, things in motion, processed into another things in motion. We're constantly laboring to determine that which governs, regulates, motivates all the separate but related and interrelated processes. From the viewpoint that consciousness is determined by dialectical objective developments.